Hey guys, Jim here. I wanted to have a little discussion with you about a very common topic. If you run around a lot of different Facebook knife groups, you're going to see a lot of topics that arise surrounding buying, selling, trading, how to properly package a knife. Somebody getting a knife in the mail and the packaging was atrocious and they either lost the knife in the mail or it could have been very easily lost because the packaging was open and they're bitching about that. Talking about what's the safest way to ship a knife, how to accept payment, who to accept payment from, doing vouchers and stuff like that, and PayPal and alternatives to PayPal. And I wanted to kind of give you kind of an all-encompassing video to give you some ideas on how to be an effective buyer, seller, trader, to be a good guy when it comes to that, to be well respected, to understand what your rights are, to understand what the dangers are, because there is no 100% safe way to do any transaction for anything on the internet, especially when you're dealing in a large community where there's going to be a lot of strangers, people that you haven't dealt with before. So I've made a few notes over here on my laptop, and I'm going to try and go in the order that I have them here, and I may veer off every now and then, but I'm going to try to cover as many of the important topics as I can and hit all the salient points within them. So starting things off on how to package a knife and which courier to use. Now, when it comes to packaging up a knife, one of the biggest and one of the most egregious, one of the biggest mistakes that you can make is any knife at all, whether if it's in its own box or if it's in a pouch or whatever. People shipping them in fucking envelopes. Don't ever put a knife in an envelope and expect it to make it to its destination unscathed. You know, whether you're sending a $50 Kershaw or a $5,000 Ron Best, you want to treat it with as much respect as you can for the person that's receiving it. You want to make sure that it's going to arrive there on time, and arrive there intact. So always ship in a box. Whether you're using Postal Service or UPS or FedEx, you can use their boxes, you can use your own cardboard box, but whatever you do, always ship in a cardboard shipping box. Always. They're super cheap, they're easy to get, and if you're using the Postal Service, you can go onto the USPS website and they will send you priority boxes for free. It doesn't even cost you anything. The other thing is securing it within that box. Use bubble wrap or use packing paper, something that keeps it from shifting around. If you've closed that box up and before you do the final taping, if you can shake it around and hear it shifting around, pack more stuff into it. Pack it nice and tight where it doesn't shift around and where you're not going to risk any damage from it shifting around. The other part is use a lot of tape. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they'll get the USPS priority box. They'll put the knife inside. They'll pack it really nicely. It's all wrapped up in bubble wrap and it's packed in nice and tight. And they seal the flap over, and they may even put a piece of tape over where the flap is. But the two ends on a small priority box can be torn open super easily because it's just a tab of cardboard going into a slot after it's been folded over. Number one, there's gaps that's going to be around. It's very easy to jam your finger in there, rip it open, and steal something and run. And I don't want to say that postal carriers or postal employees are thieves. However, we do know of reports of many that have been arrested for stealing packages or stealing contents out of packages. So what you want to do is you want to slow down that potential thief. Tape is not Fort Knox. It's not going to stop somebody that really wants to get into a package. If they have enough time, they see the mailman has delivered something in your mailbox, they know you're not home for the next 3 hours, they can grab it, they have enough time to get into it and cut it open and toss that box back in your mailbox. Nothing's going to stop them. But if it was an employee of the Postal Service or it was somebody subcontracted, especially during the holidays, they subcontract a lot. You'll see somebody in a blue Nissan Sentra pulling mail out of their trunk and throwing it in your mailbox. That ain't a mail Jeep. If they could do it quickly and they could just quickly take their finger, pop the side open, rip out what's inside, throw it in their pocket and walk away, if they're already tempted to do that, that's going to make it easier for them to do so. So tape the living shit out of it. Clear packing tape is an inexpensive piece of insurance. The more tape you can put on it, the safer it's going to be. It also keeps moisture and, rainwater and everything else from getting inside the package as well. So take the flap down on the main flap and tape the sides down so they can't get into it quickly and easily. Another thing that comes up a lot is insuring knives against theft. First off, you need to realize that the United States Postal Service does not insure knives. Knives are actually on their prohibitive list. You are not supposed to legally ship knives through the U.S. mail. I think it may even be specific to priority mail. And I'll pop something up here that shows that up on the screen. So if your package containing a knife were to get lost and you put $1,000 insurance on there and you go to claim it, you're not going to get shit. The second bad thing about putting insurance on a postal priority shipped item, and I've talked to numerous people within the United States Postal Service about this, so I do know that this is true. You're putting a big red flag on there. Hey, it's worth me risking losing my job because that's a high-ticket item, because that's got high-ticket insurance on it. Everything else that falls under the normal, $100, I think is the normal free insurance rate. They're probably going to let that come and go and come and go and come and go. But they see one that's flagged, it's got insurance, and it's high-ticket insurance, they're much more likely to steal the contents or the entire package, making sure it never gets it to its destination. So, my God, there's so much dust in this room. I apologize. I'm just trying to keep myself from sneezing. So for one, you put insurance on a postal product. You are giving them a heads up. Hey, this might be worth losing my job over. And number two, it doesn't matter how you insure it. You cannot file a claim and get paid for it. You could talk to any number of knife makers who have been down that road at some point in their career, lost a knife or a dozen knives and coming back from heat treat or sending out to a customer, whatever it is, and they got nothing out of it. So this is another verifiable fact. If you really are shipping a high ticket item, what I would do is ship overnight, because it goes through fewer hands, makes fewer stops. It's going to be going as direct as possible to the destination. It's more likely to arrive there intact. And I always suggest if somebody's going to do that, you're saying, $2,000 big investment, ship it FedEx overnight. FedEx seems to be, none of them are reliable, and in different geographical areas, you'll hear different people bitch about different companies. In my area, UPS is the worst to have anything delivered by. The Postal Service is one of the best. And other people in other areas are going to tell you just the opposite. So whatever courier you choose to go with, choose overnight if you really want to make sure it gets there and you can't afford to replace that item. Because what you don't want also is to be in that internet tug of war of who's right and who's wrong. Well, when I dropped off the item, it was no longer my concern. It was addressed properly and I shipped it properly, but it never arrived. Now the guy that bought it wants you to refund him. You don't want to give him his money back and be out a knife. He doesn't want to be out the money and a knife. Nobody wins in that situation. Somebody is going to give, and it's usually the person that has the greatest rep, that doesn't want to ruin their rep, is going to go, shit, I'm just going to go ahead and do this to save my ass. Whether you feel it's right or you feel it's wrong, something bad is going to come out of that. And when it goes public, there are people on both sides of the argument there. Nobody is ever really going to be right. So if you want to be sure it's going to get there, ship overnight. I always tell people FedEx because in my experience, having shipped, my God, thousands and thousands of knives, I'm going to tell you that I've had best luck with FedEx, with it actually getting to its destination and getting there when it was promised. Again, your results may vary, but again, if you're going to ship something high ticket, you want to make sure it gets there. Definitely ship overnight if you're at all worried about it. It's just a little bit less risky. Communication during the transaction. Now, there's a few different levels of this. You've got communication during the initial contact and the initial inquiry. You've got communication during the sale, and you've got communication post-sale once the transaction has completed and money has changed hands. So looking at this for both buyers and for sellers, when you make initial contact, ask all the questions that are going to be important to you all at once. There was a thread recently in a Facebook knife group where both parties ended up posting about this in various groups. And each one thought they were in the right and thought the other person was being an absolute asshole about the whole thing. Basically, what had happened was person A put the item up for sale in a few different places on Facebook. Person B replied over to them and said, hey, I'm interested in this, and asked them a couple of questions. They got the replies. Then several hours later, they replied back with more questions. The seller was still nice, still kept giving the answers, waited a few more hours. I think it was like 4 or 5 hours between each individual reply. Then he would reply back, oh, can I see more pictures and this and that. And finally the seller went, you know what, screw this. I'm not dealing with you. You're a tire kicker. You're a pain in my ass. He didn't say it, but I've spent a past full working day, full 8 hours dealing with you as an individual while I'm, there are other people that are messaging. I may be telling them, no, it's not available. I got a guy who wants to buy it. Who knows what he was doing in the other messages. But the point was, you wasted my time all day and I still see no sign that you're ready to purchase this item. So just stop it. So what you want to do is get all the questions out in the beginning. Whatever it is that you want to know, the condition of the knife. You want to hear it better described. You have specific questions about, maybe the weight of it or the balance of it. You want to see more pictures perhaps than they had posted in their ad. Or the ad said that there was light use and there was a couple of snail trails on the pocket clip, and you're like, well, I really want to see a better picture of that pocket clip so I know that I can live with that, just so you don't have buyer's remorse. Get all those questions out of the way and do it in the initial contact, because what's going to happen is that every time that you go back and forth with that seller, he might be getting other messages. Somebody could be just standing there going, hey, take my money. And he's like, well, I've got to give first right of refusal to the first guy I started conversing with. And that may send the other buyers off to somewhere else. They may find another deal. They may spend that money on somebody else's knife. You end up backing out for some reason after 2, 3, 4, 5 messages. And then the seller goes back to his old messages. They're like, oh, no, man, I bought something else with that money that was burning a hole in my pocket. So what you're doing is you're doing yourself a disservice, because you might just get a seller that goes, hey, I don't have time for this shit. I just sold it to somebody else. Then you're mad. Or you're screwing them over and they're losing the opportunity to sell that particular item. So get all your questions out in the initial contact. And once you get the reply that you need, let them know whether you're ready to buy it or you're not ready to buy it. If you're not going to buy it, if you're having any apprehension whatsoever, discuss the apprehension. Maybe it's something that you two can work out, a different price or something else. But at least they know this is not somebody that's committed to buying this. I can move on to someone else. Let's see. Ask the right questions all the way at once. So that's pretty much it. Tire kickers and how not to look like one. If the price is higher than you want to spend, then you want to come right out and make your offer. I'm not saying lowball somebody. Nobody enjoys that at all. But, if you see an item listed for $500, you're not willing to spend over $475, including shipping, make that part of your initial contact. And whatever questions you have, just say, listen, all I've got in my PayPal that I can spend is $475, all included with shipping. Are you willing to go down to that price? That way, you both know where you stand. He knows that you're not going to spend more. You know that he's not going to accept that low of an offer, and you can break ways, or you could start coming to that agreement. That way, you're not bothering them with 100 questions, taking up their time to just come back and go, okay, well, I'm not going to give you what you want. Here's what I'm willing to spend. And they're going to go, no, I'm already taking a big loss on it. I'm not going to take a bigger loss. Why didn't you tell me that from the beginning? Again, now I got to go chase down other people that actually were going to buy it. So don't be that guy. Don't get the reputation of being a tire kicker. Nobody likes that. And you will be ratted out if you've done that to a number of people. People are just going to start talking about it openly in the groups and go, hey, man, don't deal with this guy. He's a pain in the ass. Here's all the screenshots. He wouldn't stop and he wouldn't stop. And then at the end of the day, he still wasn't going to pay me what I very clearly asked for. So don't be that guy. A lot of the stuff that comes down when it comes out as being some sort of bickering over an item for sale, a lot of times it's somebody not appreciating somebody else's attitude or disrespect toward them in some way. So a lot of it is going to be revolving around how you word things. Oh my God. Don't act like you're going to commit and then back out at the last minute when the guy gives you his PayPal info. Don't be that guy that you've gone through all the questions, you've gotten them to send you additional pictures and video, and they balanced it on the end of their nose, and they dropped the price by 20%. And then at the end, you're like, yeah, you know what? I got to go talk to my wife. Oh, my wife won't let me do it, or whatever other excuse there is. When you've gotten to that point where you've negotiated a price, you've gotten all the answers that you want, and it's come to the point where they're giving you their PayPal information, you're committed. At that point, you need to follow through. If for some reason you've got cold feet up until that point, let them know. Just go, you know what? Maybe if this was $50 less, I could overlook a couple little things that I'm not crazy about, but at that price, I just can't do it. And that gives them the opportunity to then start working with you maybe on the price. But don't be the guy that exhausts every single option in the transaction to then go, yeah, you know what, I don't think I'm going to buy it. Because all you're going to do is piss that person off. It may not be enough for them to try to get you blacklisted, but they're certainly going to tell people the experience that they had with you. That's for certain. Now, another big important thing is payments. What payment methods to accept, how to send the payment, and everything else. First off, we're going to deal with PayPal in the beginning here. If you don't know someone well, only do goods and services. You're gonna want that guarantee. If you found this really screaming deal on this Shirogorov, and the guy's selling it for $400, and you're like, man, that's way less than that knife should be. But I'm going to jump on that deal. And you send it to them friends and family, and they send you a box with a brick inside. Yeah, you're screwed. You have no recourse. You can't go to PayPal and go, hey, this guy ripped me off. They're going to go, well, you skipped paying our fee. There's no buyer protection whatsoever. You should have paid the, $8 in fees, and we would have given you a refund. But instead, you chose to shaft us, and we're not going to help you. And that's their attitude about it. So if you don't know them well, do goods and services. That way there's a record of the transaction. And if for some reason you're not satisfied as the buyer, PayPal will make sure you get your money back from them. No matter what it is, no matter what service you're using, no matter if you're doing goods and services or friends and family, don't ever put in the notes of the transaction anything that leads back to that product being traded for money is a knife for any reason. Years and years and years ago, before PayPal really cracked down on their weapons policy, people would feel free to write, oh yeah, it's for the Shirogorov folding knife. And it wasn't a big deal. Now, if that Shirogorov folding knife happened to have a Damascus blade and somebody wrote the word Damascus, then that person's account got flagged because Damascus, the capital of Syria, terrorism, all that whole thing. It got to be a real wild mess. But now it's not that specified and it's not that simple. If you're caught exchanging money through PayPal for what they call a weapon, whether you call a knife a tool or not, whether you're buying a knife, a gun, a bow and arrow, If they deem it to fall under their weapons clause, they can shut down that seller's account. So don't ever put their account in jeopardy by typing anything into the notes about it being a knife, a transaction from a knife group, or the name of the knife group, or anything like that. There's no need for you to add notes. If you're doing goods and services, they have your legal name, they have your shipping address, and at the very most, if you're on a social media platform where you made that initial contact and your username doesn't match up to your real name or match up to your PayPal email, put in the notes what your username is. And that's it. So they can match it up. But that's it. Don't ever mention knives. You're going to screw somebody really, really badly. Let's see. Yeah, make sure your shipping address is always up to date in PayPal. Sometimes you'll have sellers that are in such a big hurry, maybe they have a whole bunch of stuff to get out the door the next day. They're going to print up all those labels, get them out the door, and they're only going to send you the confirmation of tracking after they're gone and picked up, and that's it. And you might go, oh shit, no, that's where I lived 3 years ago. Where'd you get that? Well, it was on your damn PayPal. It's your responsibility to keep your PayPal information up to date. So if you have moved, one of the first things you should be doing is updating your PayPal information, because that is information that's automatically generated to the seller if you're using goods and services. So make sure that's up to date. Now, when we talk goods and services versus friends and family, you want to always try to use, this is where it's going to get to be a gray area. You want to try to use goods and services if you're buying from someone that you don't know. As a seller, it gets a little bit strange. You want to try to get friends and family as often as possible, friend or not. And I only say that for one reason. There has been a scam that's gone around. We've caught several people over the past couple of years doing this. But there was one individual I remember almost 8 years ago now. He was doing it to retailers that accepted PayPal. He was doing it to private collectors. Man, it was a mess. And he was doing it as long as 18 months after he had done the transaction and received his knife. What someone is able to do, let's say I am selling you this knife. You bought this knife using goods and services through PayPal. I have shipped you this knife in perfect condition, perfect packaging. You received it, whether you kept it, you turned around and sold it, whatever you did. And then 6 months later, you file a claim with PayPal saying, hey man, I bought this item from this guy, and man, you can see there's the transaction. I paid him. I never received it. Or if it shows tracking information on PayPal, if they did that through PayPal, I got the box, but it was cut open. There was nothing inside, or there was a brick inside, or there was a picture of his wife's titties or something. I don't know, but it wasn't the item I paid for. 9 times out of 10, PayPal is going to side with the buyer, the one spending the money. And you're going to wake up one day, 6 months after that one transaction with the guy whom you do not remember at all. You're going to wake up, you're going to check your PayPal, and it's $500 lighter, and you don't know why. Well, they issued a refund to a guy that bought a knife from you, that received that knife, and everything was done right on your end. They just decided to scam you, and they did. So that has been done several times with great success, unfortunately. I do believe it's a little bit harder nowadays to run that scam, but I do know even as recent as 6 months ago, people have reported people doing that, and they had plenty of detailed information to prove their side of the case. So, if you're accepting payment, if at all possible, try to get friends and family. That way they can't turn around and screw you. But I would leave it at this caveat. You as the seller should be the one with a very, very strong reputation, that have sold a lot of knives or bought, traded, whatever, and you have a very strong name where you can refer that person and go, hey, listen, I know it seems distrustful to send somebody you don't know, friends and family. Here's a list of very, very popular people, very vocal people in the groups that I've done business with that will tell you that I'm going to deliver what I promise. So it's really tough. It's really tough to decide whether you should trust goods and services or friends and family. I'm not going to tell you right here, right now, there is only one way to do it. Now you have the information from both sides of it. You see the pros and the cons, and you make up your own mind. Keep in mind, there is no 100% safe way to ever do any transaction on the internet. That's just the way it is. Alternatives to PayPal. A lot of people are really pissed off at PayPal. They don't like their weapons policy. They're afraid of getting their accounts shut down. We've watched knife makers now get their accounts shut down. And they go out there and go, hey, who would you use for an alternative? Would you use Zelle? Would you use Cash App? Would you use, whatever the other ones are? Here's the problem with that. I've been very fortunate. I haven't had my account in danger, but I've seen the writing on the wall and went, maybe I should back myself up. So I got a Zelle, I got a Cash App, and I got another one, Venmo. And I would try to do transactions with those, both as a buyer and as a seller. And I'm going to tell you this right now, 95% of all the people that you go to do transactions with will only use PayPal. They don't want to use the other services. They may even already have an account with one of the other services and they don't want to use it. You're either going to, as a buyer, miss out on buying something that you really, really want to get your hands on, or as a seller, are going to need to sell an item and you're not going to be able to. That's just the way it is. As much as PayPal sucks, as much as their policies suck, that's just the way it is. Almost everybody uses them, and you're going to be left out in the cold at some point. You may have a few great transactions, but it's going to be that one that you really want to close that deal, and you're not going to be able to because they only deal with PayPal. So if you're going to look at alternatives, it's great to have them. There's nothing wrong with it. But make sure you do keep a PayPal. And what I suggest to people, especially if you're going to be a dealer or a knife maker, the biggest mistake you can make is put, blah, 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 Blade Works on there. My PayPal doesn't say Skeleton Blade Works. It's my email address, period. Because if they see, anything related to knives, what they call weapons, they're going to eventually shut them down. Shane from Scorpion 6 Knives just had this happen. And it was thousands of dollars sitting in that account that they were telling him they were going to hold for as long as 6 months before they released it to him. It was a really, really nasty thing. Well, you have the word knives in the name. Yeah, at some point they're going to figure you out and they're going to shut you down. So don't have anything related to knives or weapons in the name of your account. Don't let it be discussed in the notes on your transactions, and you'll be fine. But yeah, always back yourself up. Have other ways of taking or accepting or sending money. That's totally fine. But you're going to end up with a transaction where your only choice is going to be PayPal. So don't lose out on that. And don't screw yourself or somebody else just because you want to save $5, $6, $8, $10 on a transaction fee. If you and the other person only feel comfortable using goods and services on PayPal, either factor that into your price so it's already built into it, or make sure they agree to pay it, whatever it is. It's not worth the risk. If you feel friends and family is too risky, all because you wanted to save $8, it's just not worth it. This whole thing on Facebook that we see a lot in the Facebook selling groups of people getting vouchers. Remember this. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm doing a deal with Jim. Has anybody done business with him that could tell me good or bad? There's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of people are just solely relying on vouchers. Think about it this way. The vast majority of scammers that you see reported are people that at one time had a good standing in the knife community in their previous transactions. Very few that you see reported on these various groups started out by scamming people. There certainly have been, but that's the minority. So all you're going to be doing is weeding them out because they don't have any vouchers. To get a vouch for somebody, you got 5 people saying, yeah, man, I did business with him. It was great. Let me stop right there. Think about the times you've seen someone report somebody and go, here's all the screenshots of our entire transaction. They fucked me over. And what almost always happens is you're going to see a couple of comments in that thread below going, man, I've done business with that guy a few times and he was fantastic. Vouchers are only so good. They're not a guarantee, and there never will be a guarantee unless there was some way to ensure you're sending money to a third party and they're sending, you're doing some kind of escrow thing. Maybe, but you got to really trust that third party too. They both have to trust that third party. So there's no real way to truly guarantee that you're going to get paid or that you're going to receive the product that you paid for. A lot of it is unfortunately going to be about trust. So just always think about it like that. Every transaction is a risk unless you've done business before or unless the person you're doing business with is a really, really, really big name and has done, hundreds and thousands of transactions and everybody knows them and they're easy to track down. There's enough people out there that have that person's physical address. That's the only time that you have some sort of guarantee, because at least then you could turn it over to law enforcement, because the 80 people that said, yeah, he's good to go, one of those 80 people is going to give you that person's physical address, and hopefully you could turn something over to law enforcement. So vouchers, they're not a bad thing. Just don't believe that that is going to be your sole bit of security. It's going to guarantee that transaction, because that's just not the way it is. And one of the final things I want to talk about is, and I'll go ahead and close this, is the differences in selling and buying on Facebook versus Instagram. We're not going to talk about forums because forums are pretty much a dead medium and nobody really cares about them anymore. But when it comes to Facebook, you're as a seller, you're going to get a lot more tire kickers. And I can tell you from personal experience from selling knives out of my own personal collection, as well as being a knife maker selling my knives, I can put up a sales ad on Facebook and Instagram at the same exact time with the same information and same pictures. I will get 1 or 2 bites, if that, maybe from Facebook, and get 20 on Instagram and have somebody ready right away from Instagram, ready to purchase. Facebook is not a great medium to sell on. Number one, they make it very difficult. If you put up a picture of a knife and then you put in the caption, this is what I'm selling and this much, it's going to get taken down. And it's also going to put unwanted attention in any knife group that you may have listed that in. So you can't do that. So we all have our little ways around that. What I always do is I'll put a picture up and I will embed text in the picture and write on there, this is what's for sale for how much. That way I don't have to write it in the caption or in the description at all, and I don't really have to risk that deletion. But regardless of however you choose to list it, you're going to have better luck with the community on Instagram than you will on Facebook. Can you sell on Facebook? Do people have success doing it? Absolutely. But you're generally going to have better success on Instagram. Now that Facebook has instituted hashtags, I don't know if that's made it any better or not. I know I have never once ever logged onto my personal Facebook and searched a hashtag. I'm not sure I even know how to. I'm pretty sure I could figure it out. But I do know that if I wake up one day and I'm like, you know what? I feel like buying myself a new knife. I'll go to Instagram and I'll go to one of the knife sale hashtags on Instagram and see everything that people have listed on there. So Instagram is easier for that. And for some reason, people generally tend to be more ready to commit, and I have no explanation as to why, if they're reaching out to you through direct message on Instagram than they do if they're reaching out to you on Facebook. And maybe that's because the Instagram knife community is a little bit of a tighter knit community. Maybe there were fewer newbies out there. You tend to be following each other, so you kind of know each other. And we see new people that are completely new to knives entirely every single day in the Facebook knife groups, no matter what group you're into. that don't know anything. I mean, seriously, they don't know anything about knives or how to buy knives. When you start seeing people writing almost every single day, is Blade HQ a trusted resource to buy from? Then you know they don't know anything about knives or this particular community. So I think that there's less experience on Facebook, and that may be an explanation for it. But I know from speaking from personal experience, I'll always be able to sell something tremendously easier on Instagram. And if you're not already on Instagram, that really is where all the knife community went. There's still a great presence, of course, on Facebook. But I think when it comes down to it, Instagram has had the best long-term community we've seen since the heyday of forums. When the forums started falling apart and just getting cliquey and the mob mentality really started kicking in left and right, people migrated directly from the forums directly to Instagram. And when I was being told to go there, I'm like, I don't want Instagram. I was always thinking it was like Twitter. I'm like, I'm not a 16-year-old girl. I don't need to be on there. And everybody's like, no, this is where the community is. This is where all the knife makers are to follow their work and everything else. And I learned that, and I've enjoyed I don't know, enjoyed every minute of it, but I've enjoyed it greatly, a lot more than Facebook. So if you're looking for a better success in selling, and you're looking for probably a better selection when buying, you might definitely want to check out using Instagram. Just make sure if you're selling that your profile is set to public. If it's not set to public, doesn't matter what hashtags you use, nobody can see it. And that is going to be very different than Facebook, because you can go into a Facebook group with your private profile and post an item up because that item is being hosted on that page, so people can see it and they can contact you. Instagram is different. You're going to have to have your profile made public for them to see the things that you post. That's the biggest difference. But I've found I've had much better success there. You may have had better success on Facebook, and that a lot of times is going to have to do with your following and your understanding of hashtags and hopefully the potential customers' knowledge of using hashtags. But that's pretty much it. If you have any questions about what I've talked about here, or if you think of certain things that maybe I didn't think of to even discuss in this video, put them down below. I'll do my best to answer them as long as I possibly can. I'll try to keep coming back to this video and checking it out and see if there's any new questions. But I think I've covered all the major topics about trust and about different services to use and the best way to use them. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you take anything away from this, it's when you do a sale or a trade, ship the damn thing in a box and tape the living shit out of it. Nothing. I've had it happen only twice, but nothing has made me more angry than opening up my mailbox and seeing an envelope. And knowing that inside of that envelope that offered no protection from shipping damage and certainly no theft protection is the new dream knife that I was waiting to get from, Bobby on Facebook or some shit. Oh, I will never, those two people that did it, I never dealt with them ever again. I do not trust you in any way. So ship in a box, pack it very well, use lots of tape, and that'll probably save you from half the headaches that exist. That's it for me for right now. I'll catch you guys on the next video.